episode of the Better Two podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and M.Needom, author of My Days with the Dark Muse, as well as Love is Worth Waiting For. Hi, gang. Donna here. Thanks for tuning into the Better Two podcast. Today's guest is Peter Paul Parker. Peter and I talk about, we talk about music. We talk about bass playing, which, yes, I admit that my bass playing days are not what they used to be. But he talks about how he ended up walking away from being a professional musician and finding his true passion. So enjoy. Hi, Peter. How are you doing today?
Very good, very good. It was a wonderful January day here in London, and the sun was out and there's bright blue skies. The temperature was unusually warm, and I was feeling good. I just come back from a Ki Gong class, and so I feel really refreshed.
Yes, I can really tell it's nighttime there. It's It's noon here, but that's the time difference.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you were not really always an instructor of Ki Gong. What did you do before? You were a musician, correct?
That's right. Yes. So I was a professional musician. Actually, from a very early age, I was introduced to music. One of my older brothers was the original lighting man for the first Rolling Stones tour. So I was introduced to rock and roll from the moment of opening up my eyes, basically, because he was quite a few years older than me. And I was always fascinated by music. And I had quite a traumatic childhood, but I got into music at about the age of 19, 20. But I had a good education, so I'd done a lot of studying. And I was expected to get a good job. I got the good job and I thought, I can't do this anymore. So I decided to become a musician. So music was, to me, looking back now, was like an enormous meditation for me, because I got to such a high level with music. I was in the British Who's Who of popular music. I was being named in magazines. I was playing with big artists at the time. Many people don't remember them, but like people like Thin Lizzy. And I played with lead members of Madness like Suggs. So I played with some big musicians, and one of the good ones was Tom Etheridge, he's a top jazz player. And I used to sit in on his classes and play bass on his classes. And I didn't realize what a big deal that was until a few years later, thinking, wow, there's me jamming with John Etheridge. So I was at a level, but I was full of humility with it. But it was such a brilliant life. It was about 10 years I was a professional musician. So I was touring a lot, recording a lot. I'd set up a little recording studio in Shepperton, and we were recording lots of local artists and things like that. So I was out gigging many evenings and working during the day and having my fair share of the glamour and the glitz. And it's not always glamour and glitz. Everybody sees the glamour and the glitz, but it's a lot of hard work going up and down motorways. But I loved it because it was away from that corporate world that I'd broken out of, and I'd just gone into my sort of right brain fantasy world of when I was a young boy, thinking I want to be a rock star, and I was kind of living the life, and it didn't really sort of sink in until it started to fade after about 10 years because rock music was everywhere when I was playing. It was like the immersion of like Aerosmith was getting to their heights, and Guns N' Roses were getting to their heights. I was still a young boy then. And I just coming off the back of that, and everybody was growing their hair long and everybody was rocking out in every pub in every corner in England. I think it's probably the same in America. And it was brilliant because you could literally make a living out of gigging. And there was gigs everywhere. Everybody was in demand for bass players. I decided to be a bass player because I thought, this is what I want to do. This is great because you're like a diplomat in the band, because you're actually working with the drummer, but because you're melodic as well, you're working with the other instruments in the band. So I loved that position, and it was the rock, because my name being Peter, it's kind of signifies the rock, as it were. And it was great. I loved it. And unfortunately, as the music technology changed, I was really resistant to that, actually, which is what part of this conversation is all about, is about my resistance to it, was resisting the technology coming in, because we used to use these big washing machine type recording equipment. And I loved it because it's all analog, and you had to play it, and you had to play it right all the way through. There was you could jump in, you could cut in if you had a good engineer with you. but they'd like you to get it all fresh and out in one go and leave the mistakes in. It was all organic and wonderful. And then the digital started to take over, where you could go into each nuance and start to fiddle about with each note to make sure everything's perfectly in tune. And then you cut the notes up and you do something what you call quantize, where it all shrinks the notes into position so it all sounds like it's in perfect timing. And if you listen back to some of the old records, if you put a metronome onto them now, the timing's all over the place, and you listen to it now, it's all dead straight. So there's less organic feel to music in today's world. Be a good thing, a bad thing, that's really up to the listener. But to me, it was like breaking away from tradition. But gradually, I broke that preconception down and started to embrace the new technology. And I wrote an album called Anahata, which was my last professional music endeavor, as it were. And it was about my sort of awakening as a human being. And Anahata in Sanskrit means unstruck, sound unstruck, an unstruck chord. And it's philosophical sort of meaning to it. And I released that with New World Music. They signed the album and released it for me. And the day of the release, I just Googled it on, because I was excited, obviously. Yeah, got my record out. And I Googled it and I saw it being downloaded on loads of free sites and things like that. I thought, I can't do this anymore. And then I tried one more time with a rock band where the lead singer was like a mixture between Bon Scott and Tina Turner. She had just the most terrific voice. And we had a fantastic drummer in Hawkwind. He was one of Hawkwind's old drummers. So the rhythm section was really, really kicking it. But the guitarist should have been someone like Jimmy Page, if you know about rock music.
Yeah.
And he wasn't. And I said to the band at that point, I said, no, we need to sharpen the guitars up. And sure enough, management interest came along because of her. And they started saying, well, we want the image right. We're not worried about the music, but the management says they want to get the melodies right and get the music flowing. Because if you listen to Led Zeppelin and all the great bands, you've got these wonderful melodies flowing through, just four people making this sound. We weren't doing it. We had the power and the top half. The vocals were brilliant. The rhythm section was brilliant, but there was something lacking in it. And as soon as they were saying to me, you got to get the image right, I'm going, well, the image is right. I look like, even now, today, I still look like a rock bass player. So what's it talking about? Get the image right. It all started to become a bit pretentious. And actually, the band before that, I was signed to a record label called Mercury Records, quite a big label at the time. Yeah. And we were just about to release a single, and we were touring. We had a planned tour for Europe, planned tour in the UK as well. And the night before the release of the single, it was all pulled. There was an altercation between one of the A&R men and one of the girl singers. And I don't know what it is to this day, but I realized that it's all kind of phony, because it was 3 weeks later on one of the big soaps in England, the single was on the radio in the pub. So it was like they were pushing it. It was really quite prominent sort of part placement in the pub. And I just thought, this is all just set up now. It's all contrived. It's not really about the music. And that kind of broke my heart a little bit, because I'm thinking, I love music. I want to play music and perform music, and I still do. I was singing today, actually, out in one of the community centres I go to. But it kind of made me disillusioned about the whole business side of it, because my passion really was just to play music, be a musician. And I hated all the politics and all the business side of it, because it always ended in arguments and, I did a bit more on that song, I want a more bigger cut and things like that. So I've always tried to be in bands where you just split everything fairly. And okay, if someone's writing the songs, then they take the writer's royalty, but everything else should be kind of split. But it gets really complicated, band politics and things like that. And I don't miss that at all. Don't miss that one little bit. But I do miss the camaraderie of being in a band in that respect, because you're like family traveling. Right. But that was brilliant time of my life. If you could imagine partying for 10 years when you've got the stamina for it.
I can, and I have a friend that is English, and he was a known percussion player, and he toured with some bigger bands. So we got to hang out, and he finally has kind of recently settled down. And but he was touring for years, so I understand. I mean, it
Yeah.
gets, if you enjoy it and it's part of your life, you're gonna keep doing it. But the one thing we don't look at, the normal 9 to 5 person thinks, oh well, there's office politics. There's politics everywhere,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
everywhere. So I guess when the synthetic basses came about, you really just, that must have got your back up back in the 80s when they started doing the synth bass.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was. I think it was. Remember that song "Frankie Goes to Hollywood"? Relax.
Yep.
It was two tribes.
Yeah.
So there's you trying to. You realize it's a synthesized bass, but you're trying to emulate that as a bass player. And yeah, I could slap and pop and all that kind of business. But I was just thinking it was just becoming so mechanical and robotic and almost mind-numbing, some of it. I mean, yeah, it's great songs still. Some of the music was good, but yeah, it was the end of the bass player in the studio. And even my bass teacher, Rob Burns, he was a big session musician in the 60s. He lost work because of it, because now we got a bass player now, as in the keyboard, so they could just plug it in. And it lost a lot of the heart of music, I think, because if you listen to some of the old Motown tracks, like James Jamerson was my hero, and you hear that movement on the bass underneath everything. Paul McCartney is brilliant at it as well. And some of my favorite bands like The Who or Led Zeppelin, you've got that movement of the bass underneath. It doesn't happen so fluently and so easily today, because that was like a feeling or an essence of, it's like that saying, if I ain't got that swing, it don't mean a thing. It gives the music the swing. It gives it the movement. And when you syncopate it, so they call it funk in the clave, when you're just pushing across the beat, you can do it with the bass and the drums. It just sounds great. And that's what James Jamerson was the master of, and everybody kind of followed suit. And that was what was losing its essence to me in music, was that beautiful bass end of it. It was just it was a loss. Yeah.
I mean, I have to say, I was a bass player. I haven't really played in a long time. That's why it's like I can have this conversation somewhat with you. One of the songs I did learn was "Relax" by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, because that was my jam. But my biggest influences were John Taylor from Duran Duran and Gary Beers from NXS.
Oh yeah,
I like their styles, and I mean, John, you were talking about syncopation. That's John's go-to, is a syncopated bass for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got that funk groove, which I know some people. When I was growing up, I used to get crap because I liked Duran, but the funny thing is, anytime I mentioned I was a bass player and he was an influencer, like, oh, he does what he's doing. Okay. So you're giving me crap, but then okay.
Yeah. I think it was just the girl following, the female screaming following, and the way that they made themselves up, because you actually listen to their songs, and you hear the songs back now today, they still hold up today. They're great songs, great pop songs, and great bass playing. Yeah, fantastic bass playing. Another great bass player from that time was Nick Beggs. Mm-hmm. Do you remember him from Kajagoogoo? He was phenomenal, and I watched him play a Chapman stick once down the one of the clubs I used to go to, the Kashmir Club, where I used to do some singer-songwriting stuff as well. It was run by Tony. He was from the Cutting Crew.
Okay,
and it was like quite big names down there. I watched Nick Beggs play this. I don't know how he did it. This Chapman stick. It was just that. How's he making that noise? Was that just him? Yeah. Just phenomenal musician. And it was a treat to actually go around and see these people, just in little clubs, not seeing them on the big stage, like 40, 50 people in the audience and chatting to them afterwards and things like that. It was a brilliant experience. Well, you see the real side of them rather than the commercial side.
Exactly. There's an intimacy when you're seeing them at a club or a smaller place, because you don't have all the production. I mean, I went to one of the biggest productions in the 80s, which was Live Aid. So I was there for Zeppelin, and I wasn't standing on my own feet because the crush of the crowd, because that was the first time Zeppelin had gotten back together. And the show was great. But the thing is, if you actually listen to Zeppelin, if you go back, I mean, they actually took their performance off. They did not allow their performance to be released on the DVD set, because they were not happy. But when you're in the crowd, it sounded just fine.
Yeah. I saw it live and it was a bit wishy-washy.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law saw them at Shea Stadium, one of their first gigs in America, and she had a recording of it, and the recording wasn't particularly great quality. It was just the immense power that you could just sense from the music coming across from them. Like John Paul Jones and John Bonham as a rhythm section were just phenomenal, and I can see why they wanted them to as a rhythm section. Because it was just phenomenal sound. But yeah, I can see Live Aid wasn't the best for sound production. I think Jimmy Page's guitar was all over the place. It was like he had all these effects going on. I remember it. But I imagine live, you wouldn't have probably noticed, but recorded, it does come across a bit differently. So
the two things that stick out as glaring errors. One is from Duran. Simon hit a bum note, and yes, that was heard all around the world. That was in the papers. And Patti LaBelle's mic went out.
Okay.
We weren't at most of the show. We were down in the crowd, but we actually did have seats. So we went back up to the seats after a certain point, and her mic went out, and you could still hear her clear as a bell.
Wow.
And that to me was just like, you have a voice that is just amazing if you can pull that off.
Yeah.
So it was pretty amazing.
Good stuff.
So, but we're getting off track on talking about music and everything. So you decide, well, before we leave this, because this actually is a timely topic, how upset would you be now? I mean, I know you're still thinking about, you like music and everything, but with Spotify and, all these other avenues where you can put your record out by yourself, but the fact is you're not going to make the money. How does that, it's kind of like you were saying about the free, you're finding your record on free sites and this is disappointing. How would that play off for today? Is that one of the things that keeps you from going back into music, is because there isn't the revenue there?
Yeah, that, and whether my songs will, or the music or any soundtracks that I do will actually push. But no, it's not there. I think if you're doing well as a musician, the last time I checked, you're making $5,000 a year. You're doing well as a musician. And I thought, well, I can't actually even eat off of that. It's like very low amounts of money. So it's kind of become a hobbyist sort of thing. And I don't want to be a hobbyist as a musician. I wanted to go all in because I lived music, and that's kind of my personality, which is why I kind of got out of it. I still do it a little bit, as I say, but I don't get time because it just takes up your time. So if you're going to record a track, you've got to whittle it down, and that takes a few days, and then you've got to take it to the studio, and then that takes a few more days, and you've got to demo it, and then you've got to whittle that down, and then within a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, you've got a song. And then nobody likes the song. It's just, or somebody might like the song and it might start to get somewhere, which is what the avenue I was going down. And you say, well, yeah, I'm interested. The publishers are interested in signing this song. They want to put it to this artist. And then it goes, and you can only do that so many times, really. And you get like a bucket loads of songs. I had hundreds of songs that I'd written, and it gets to the point where you think, oh, hang on a minute, I've just got to, I can't do this anymore. Because my wife is saying, what do you want to? Yeah. And you get other pressures on you. And what I think is sadly missing about a lot of music today is you have to allow artists to just create. Create. And you see some of them, some artists, I can't name them, but I've come across a few that you really see, you go, wow, you're amazing. I never quite got to that wow. People say, wow, you're really good, why aren't you professional, when they see me in a club and they don't know who I am and I sing. But other people you see and you go, oh my goodness me. And I think what turned me at this point was I think two essences. When I saw a young band who were just like the Faces, Rod Stewart's early band, and I saw the beginnings of their set, and I thought, my goodness me, this lot of brilliant, and they had all their funny hair and everything like that. And then they got to the middle of their set, and I thought, it was almost like turning the light off. It kind of got really cheesy, and then it got to the end of their set and got really good again. I made a beeline straight for the lead singer. And I said, well, what are you doing with your stuff? He goes, well, this is the stuff got our record company interest from, was the beginning and the end of our set. But the middle of the set now, we got the producers in, and this is what they're producing for us. Wow. I said, you've lost it. You've lost all of it. You've lost it. And he said, I know. I said, I can't do anything about it. This is what we've been signed to do, and this is what we're going to be releasing. And I thought, wow, they haven't got their power of, they're young boys, and they can't. They're not like people who say, no, this is the music, you either take it or leave it. They're being influenced by that, and I thought that was quite sad. And another one, when I saw somebody singing at the Kashmir Club, just him and his guitar. And it takes a lot to turn me on with a guy just singing his guitar, and if I don't know them. And I sat there, I was mesmerized. He did 3 songs. I was mesmerized by him. I said, you're brilliant. It was absolutely phenomenal. He goes, yeah, but I haven't got a following on YouTube, and the record label wants me to get my following together. And you could tell he was a little bit hopeless on the business side, but his artistic nature was phenomenal, and all he needed was someone to grab hold of him and say, okay, well, you go in the studio here, record me an album, and we'll get it out for you, which is how it used to work. And you could tell that he was just going to be left onto the sidelines, and you think, oh, that's so sad. But it's the business, that's how it is.
I interviewed somebody on my show, I think in season either 1 or 2. He was on The Voice. You're familiar with the show, correct?
Yeah.
So he was the first runner-up, and he was told by his coach, he was told, you don't want to win. Well, the kid, he's in his 20s, so I guess he's not really a kid, but he had gone to music school, but he had studied music business. So when his coach tells him, you don't want to do this, he totally understands, because the coach says, well, if you do this, they're going to control you. They're going to control what you do and how they're going to create your image. And he told me, he's like, I saw some people on the show that they molded their image, that they were not allowed to do this. And yes, that was, one of the pieces of advice he gave was, make sure you have your social media intact prior to, and you have music already out, because otherwise they're going to package you. And it's the same thing. I've been told, I'm a writer, and I've been told by my friends, one day you're going to get a book deal. And I often now go, I don't know that I want a book deal. While it would be great, I'm still going to have to market my book. Secondly, they're going to tell me what I can and cannot put in my book. And, I like my creativity to be my creativity. I don't want to be told you can do this. Now, if they want to give me a contract for a separate series, sure. But I don't want to take away what I'm working on. So I understand what you're saying completely.
So difficult. It's so difficult. And you got to really, it's a big decision. And I see a lot of people just sell themselves off. And there was a band called Gun in London when I was just getting into this. And I was really excited to meet them, because, oh, wow, it's the first signed band we're ever going to meet. I think we were playing at the Marquee Club or something like that in London. And we met them, and they were all so miserable. I'm thinking, what's the matter with these guys? He goes, well, the record labels, making us do this and making us do that. And I suppose that never left me in some ways, because I thought, whoa, these poor guys, they're really brilliant band of London, doing the London circuit, but completely tied down by their contracts. So there's got to be a balance, which is what I found with my new sort of career now, is the balance. And to me, it's all getting out of balance. And we need to, I think it's happening now. People are being allowed to, well, we got such a wonderful thing called the internet, and we can actually start to put stuff onto the internet and make it sort of happen for ourselves. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity, say, for writers, musicians, poets, and things like that. But music I think is really hard, because people have been hammered by it, saturated, and you think about it, you've got music on all the time, and you tend to become oblivious to it. It's like when my niece came to stay from Scotland, she was talking about how many gigabytes of music she had on a iPod. And I'm thinking, well, that's a lot of music. So what's your favorite? She goes, I don't know, but I got loads. I was thinking, it's just, it was a kind of a different mindset. I was saying, well, I would say these are my 10 albums I'd take on a desert island with me, and these blah, blah, blah. But no, she had nothing like that. It was just more about getting as much music in as you possibly can. So I think that it's a kind of a youthful change in attitude to it, rather than being discerning about what you're listening to. So I grew up with things like the Doors, bands like the Doors, and I suppose the Doors of Perceptions took me into what I'm doing today, is because I really listened to the lyrics, and I thought, yeah, what the people are strange when you're a stranger and things like that. You think, wow, these are really good lyrics because they're meaningful. And that's what I used to love about music was the meaning. And I think when I started to get out of it, the psychologists were saying that people only about 3% of the population actually listen to the lyrics. Even though they can sing along with the songs, they don't actually listen to the lyrics. It's kind of in a trance as they're singing along. So I'm thinking, well, I'm agonizing over every line of these songs.
Well, yeah, I was talking to an artist last night, and I brought up Morrissey. He was younger than me, so he had no idea who Morrissey of the Smiths were. And because he wrote this song, and it has a good upbeat rhythm, but it's talking about wanting to die. Anyway, this is what this guy wrote. So I'm talking to him about the Smiths, and I'm like, yeah, I said, there's a song. I said, it's all happy sounding, but if you really stop and listen to the lyrics, he's singing about his girlfriend in a coma.
Yes, Morrissey, yeah.
It's like there's no happiness here, but the music, if you're just listening, it's like da 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 da.
Yeah.
You know? So
brilliant. Yeah. He's a genius. Morrissey, the Smiths, brilliant as well. I'm not really a big fan of his voice, but as a musician and actually keeping hold of his audience and not allowing it to die, he's done a brilliant job. You know, he's kept himself independent from it all. So I think he's done a brilliant job. Yeah, but yeah, he does sing a lot about life things, and you go, God, is that really what he's singing about?
I know, but it's one of those things. If you're not paying attention, you'll stop and go, what? Yeah. This guy that I was talking to, most of his last record is like the songs are under a minute or around a minute, maybe a little bit over a minute. And I said, is there a reason why? I said, I know it works well with social media and TikTok. He goes, well, yeah, it goes viral if it goes viral that way. But I mean, at a certain point, are you limiting yourself? And that's kind of, he's like, well, when you do over a minute of music, it becomes repetitive. I'm like, and I never thought about it that way, but I enjoy listening to a longer song. Maybe not the bathroom class. I was a disc jockey. We used to call certain songs like, I can't even remember now, but like a 6-minute song, it was like, oh, that's a bathroom classic because it gives you time to leave the booth and go to the bathroom. But Paradise City, that was one. Paradise City, because that's a 6-minute song. And it's like, okay, put that on and there you go. But that was also, going back to that, you were talking about politics. At a certain point, even radio's always had political motivation, but at a certain point, I worked at one station where I could program everything. And then I worked at another station where everything was done by computer. So if you called to hear something played, I couldn't play it. I couldn't cue it up, where before I could. So it's like even that now has been, and radio has changed a lot. I mean, with the internet, is radio even relevant?
Yeah, I know. The world is changing very rapidly. And I think one of the problems is a lot of people love this thing, the mobile phone, and they use this thing, the body, and they should be loving the body and using this. It needs to be a switch around. And I think we need to use technology as a tool rather than being subservient to it, because I think that will kill creativity, kill the right brain activity. Personally, that's what I feel. And I think it could be really a dangerous thing to go down, allowing the computer or artificial intelligence to actually run our lives for us. I think we need to be able to do that, because there was nothing like, was there, putting a DJ show together. I remember putting songs together for like the van, or putting songs together to listen to in an evening, and you're making a conscious decision to go up and then down and then maybe up or down and then around, and it becomes a creative flow in its own right. So you're constantly creating, which is why I love what I do now, is kind of I'm starting to really work my right brain, and you need to be creative as human beings. We are naturally creative. It comes from inside of us. And I think this whole takeover of technology that's almost being imposed on us, I think we need to redress that and start to create for ourselves. So that's why we're seeing lots of different things coming out. And I think it's the individual, what you need to do is to create for yourself, like you're saying, rather than getting a book deal. I want to write my books. And then if a book deal comes along and it's like a side hustle that could make it really big, great. But if it's going to take away from my own creativity, you can keep it over there because you're not coming in on this, you know?
Right. And I mean, this is one thing I want to touch on, and then we're going to pivot because, you know, before, and you're the same generation, around the same age. The fact is, you used to know phone numbers. You used to be able to recall a phone number. Now, other than my own phone number, I can't tell you somebody's phone number. I couldn't, you know, but you used to know 20, 30 phone numbers. It was there. So in a way, technology has already kind of dumbed us down because there you go. Now, how I'm going to pivot.
Here's a number. 015469058. The very first phone number I had as a 3-4-year-old boy.
Wow.
015469058. How do I remember that?
I don't know,
because I got lost quite a lot when I was a little boy. You'd go to the phone box. Remember the phone boxes? You had to ring up with it. Yeah. We had a penny. You had to put the penny in and you ring up home. I don't know why I remember that. But yes, I had about 10 phone numbers in my head at all times, friends and things like that. Yeah. Incredible.
You guys had the iconic phone boxes.
The red ones.
Yeah. Ours weren't that classy. But I was going to pivot to creativity. And the fact is, I don't know if it's because the way we're taught here, I don't know if it's over there too, but so many people sit there and go, I'm not creative. Just because they don't do art, they don't play music, they'll say, I'm not creative. And the fact is, you are creative. It's just like intuitive. People say, I'm not intuitive. The fact is, you are intuitive because you innately know things. You just don't always listen because it's tapped down. Creativity is the same way. If you're thinking outside of the box, you're being creative. And people don't look at it that way. They're just like, I'm not creative. It's like, yeah, you are. You just have to take out what your idea of creativity is.
Yeah. Well, I did that with when I met my wife. She loved to go out and eat in these really expensive restaurants. And I thought, well, why do you just want to go out and eat? So I thought, well, there's not really an alternative. So I started to learn how to cook a little bit better. And then my food became amazing because I started to create, to learn the essences of food, like hot and creamy or hot and spicy and hot and all these different sweet and sours and all these different flavors that you can mix together. And she was amazed. And she said, what, are you being a cheapskate by not wanting to go to the restaurant? I said, no, it's just, I think to be able to prepare the food is really creative. And it's something that I personally feel that we can all do if we start to really focus on it. But we can do whatever we want. It's our passion. But you're right, it's been crushed. And we need to start to work out, how can I be creative, even if you're going to be an entrepreneur or anything, a podcaster, or you need to work outside the box. You've got to see all the different avenues. And it's not always for like a monetary gain or for it's not always for a personal gain. If you start to share your experiences, that's when the magic starts to happen, because then other people will see that you're sharing. And this is what's happening in my local area, is I start to share what I do, not always charging money, do quite a lot of work for charity, actually. And everything becomes creative because you're I've got to create something for 2 hours now. So I've got a seminar coming up because we're just coming out of lockdown now, and I've got a seminar coming up for 2 hours. So I need to create that for 2 hours. So you have to sit there and think about, what am I going to do for 2 hours to entertain 30 people? It's like, okay, this is good. This is a challenge. And I'll be moving into my Ki Gong head then and doing the stuff that I do now, which would be wonderful. But anybody can do that if you just focus on what you want to do. Because when you focus on what you actually want to do and what your passion is, it's really important, because then you can create whatever you want. But trouble is with also what our passion is a lot of that has been conditioned as well, because we get conditioned to look at like the famous pop stars or the famous novelists or the famous artists, and we think, oh, I'll never be like that. And that if you're comparing yourself to somebody else, you'll never do anything, because everybody's done so many brilliant things. You'll never be the next Einstein. You'll never be the next Nikola Tesla. Or you'll never be the next big band or big singer, because you're comparing yourself to them. You need to do what you can do, and then you work out what you can do, and then you work out what you need to do to get you to where you want to be, and then you work on that. And it's just a slow chiseling of breaking it down. And then all of a sudden you go, wow, I'm here. It's like with music. I didn't know. I mean, when you get in, like on the television and you get recognized in the supermarket, you go, wow, I got recognized in the supermarket this morning. It's like, you don't think about it. You're not thinking about, well, I'm becoming famous or anything like that. It's just you're chiseling away at it, chiseling away. And that's how it works. It's not the end destination. It's actually what you're doing now is the most important thing. And it's a lot of people now been conditioned. They want to hang out at the finish line, but a lot of people don't want to run the race. And the fun is in running the race. When you get to the end with the finish line, you look back and you go, well, that's when you die, so you finished.
Yeah.
So it's running the race. And a lot of people don't want to get involved with running the race because it's work, but that's what I'm saying about your passion should be your work, and your work should be your passion. There's nothing wrong with being passionate about your work. And that's what I am, really passionate about what I do. Always have been. I was very passionate about music. Now I'm passionate about like the meditation and the Ki Gong that I do now. But that was a hard change. I mean, that was giving up being a musician. And hi, my name's Peter. I'm a musician. That was always whenever I met people. And the first day I said, well, hi, I'm Peter. It was a really sad day. Really sad day. And I thought, oh, this is such a big choice. Such a big choice to let that all go. And it's actually quite emotional for me. Like I feel the emotions in me. And you go, okay, you've made that choice now. But to do that, it was a bit like giving up smoking for me. It just took months and months and months and months and months, and even maybe a year of preparation for that moment to go, okay, that's done. I'm done. That's it. I'm moving on to something else now. And that was really hard. I mean, one of the hardest choices I've ever made in my life, to say I'm no longer a professional musician, because I wasn't. And look, I still had royalties coming in. I still got royalties coming in today, albeit very small ones. And I just had to let it go. And to let it go took a lot of strength and stamina to find what to want to do next. And it was that transition period that made it a little bit easier, because I just started to get into Ki Gong, which is like an energy workout practice, because I'm really into the mind, body, spirit arena. And I was just pushing that in my local center, as it were. And my teachers asked me to go and teach at an old people's home. I was still out playing music, doing gigs and stuff like that, still looking for bands to play with and all that business. But she said, go and teach at this old people's home. And so I went out there and I started teaching. And it's a very different to our Western culture, the way the Koreans have put this Ki Gong together. But it's fun. It's light. I liked it because it suited my personality, because I was always laughing and joking with the elderly people there. And from a class of about 6, after about 3 or 4 months, it became a class of about 30 people every week. Wow. And you could see the atmosphere changing in them. You could see the people who were attending the classes, their arthritis was getting better, their mental health was getting better. There was a 94-year-old woman who was hunched over, and she managed to open up her body. And then she asked me to marry her. And I said, sorry, I'm already married. But she was wonderful to see her last few years of her life. She died when she was 96, but see her through the last few years of her life while I was doing that made me realize that all of us are just human beings in a body that's like a vehicle, but your essence, your soul, whatever you want to call it, your energy never changes. It only develops and grows. And that really changed my life, to see that work with the elderly, to go, wow, look at you guys all changing. And then I thought to myself, what can I do with this? What can I do? That question, how am I going to create with this? What am I going to do with this? So that's when I decided there and then, okay, I'm going to spend, something like £6,500 on the training to become a Dharma master. I'll become an instructor, a proper instructor. Then I went into schools and I went into businesses and started my own practice up with lots of different classes, up to about 15 classes a week before lockdown. So I was a busy boy, seeing about over 150 to 200 people a week. I was seeing as a Ki Gong instructor. So it was a bit like the music business in the respect that I was seeing lots of people in front of me again, but it was a different type of thing, because playing music in front of thousands of people, you kind of get lost. It's just a sea of people. When you get it down to a smaller audience, like a group of friends, that's when it becomes nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness me, I know all these people. But it was much the same thing of being in front of people and being able to express myself creatively. But it was a different feel. It felt more meaningful, or it felt like the beginnings of my music career, when it felt like it was meaningful when you were playing music to people who were actually listening to the lyrics and really going, wow, I really got what you're saying in that song. It was just a different way of expressing myself. And now I really love doing it. I think the biggest class I've ever had is about 70 odd people in one room, which is pretty phenomenal. And I actually did a speech at the Care and Quality Commission in the Royal Society in London, and they look after the NHS in England, or the UK, I should say. I don't know. This country's so messed up. I think it's England and UK, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're the people who are responsible for the health and well-being of this country. And I'm going in there with a very holistic approach. And a lot of them came up to me and said, oh, I think you're going to be talking a load of guff. And I based it all on science, what I was talking about. And they came back to me afterwards and actually said, wow, I'm really going to look into what you were talking about, because they were interested. Because I really, like I did with music, I've really dived deep into the mind, body, spirit arena as well. So I used to be able to sit and talk about the modes with musicians. Now I can sit and talk about the energy system with people into the mind, body, spirit arena. So I've kind of completely morphed from the bottle of Jack Daniels to the fruit smoothie, as it were. And it's been my liver and kidneys are very grateful to me.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Yeah. So it's been an enormous transformation, but that was like I said, I was feeling very emotional then, letting that go. It's like an old human being moving into the new human being, and I love what I do now, and it's only getting better with what I do. I do coaching now, meditation coaching and Ki Gong instruction, and it's all really good. Really good stuff. I love seeing people change, because many people who are doing their passion, they don't need to change. They just need to focus on what they're doing. But there's other people, like you say, who feel like they're crushed creatively, or they feel like they haven't got any intuition to move their life in the right direction. And your intuition is your guide. So is your emotions. But if your emotions are all crushed and squeezed and pushed into a bad shape, you can't get anywhere with it. So you feel like you're walking into walls and shut doors all the time. So you need to heal your heart and heal we call it the lower danjon, where your power, your passion and your creativity actually come from, is your lower energies. And it's healing those, because we're societies today, we're talking about conditioning, we're kind of being pushed up into the left brain. And where you can sit and you just organize your desk, or you organize your Word files, and you organize your computer, but it's not really creating anything. It's not really, and I think that's where it needs to change, where people can realize that they can create anything they want. They just need to tap more into the right brain and start to think, well, what do I want to create? It's like my wife's brilliant. She tries anything. She goes, she sees someone do something on the TV like croquet, and she goes, "Oh, I'm going to give that a go." And then she is making bracelets, or she's making, these bracelets. She made. I was like a jewelry advert when she first started getting into jewelry. Oh my goodness, I didn't used to wear it at all. So I think you can. It's finding what you love to do, and then expressing that. Because when you talk about it, you'll hear the passion in people's voices. Yeah. When you talk about what you love to do. So I think it's just finding that. And then you become interesting. Is interesting. Your life becomes interesting for yourself. So you're not living your life for somebody else. And that's where the problem is, when you look at famous people and you want to be famous, but you don't know what you want to be famous for. You're not living your life. You're living their life, as it were. And you need to live your own life. And that's what we need to do, is express ourselves. And I would say at the end of this diatribe, very quickly, one smile to somebody who's having a really bad day could actually change their life and go and change the life of somebody else's, and then somebody else and somebody else. So it's just that one smile can do that. And when we really get that inside of us, to think, yeah, I could just give that person one smile, you can change their life. You could stop them from doing something really stupid.
Yeah.
Because they could be thinking, oh my goodness me, the world is so bad, everything's really rubbish, it's all falling apart. And you give them one smile, go, have a great day, and really sincerely mean it. You can really change their world for that. And I think that's where we've started to get a little bit negative as human beings, and we need to turn that around to make it positive.
Well, back to your diatribe for a second. There's several things I can unpack here. First is, you're looking at the celebrity thinking, well, they got it made. They have everything in the world. But the truth is, are they really in charge of their own life? Are they really doing what they want to do? Or are they listening to people direct them and push them? You need to go here. You need to go there. This is what you need to do. You know, there's this big picture that just because they have the house, the car, the notoriety doesn't mean they're happy. How many celebrities have ended up killing themselves?
Yeah.
Or ended up in rehab because they've indulged too much to have that escape. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, loads of them. I saw loads of them, met loads of them, lots of the happy guys I met who just, because they're Irish, I'd imagine, were Thin Lizzy, the original members of Thin Lizzy. I had the honor of playing with them, and they were just so beautiful human beings. It was absolutely, and it was just no airs and graces about them. They were just them. It was, and then also meeting the Dubliners. I don't know if they ever made it big in the States, but the Dubliners, I was on the same bill as them one time, and I just hang out at the bar drinking Guinness with them. Goodness knows, I couldn't even sniff the bar. I go near it. But I was, pint for pint Guinness with them. And you can imagine Guinness coming from Ireland, they're all Irish, and it was quite a wild night. But they were so beautifully humble as well. It wasn't about the fame or the money or anything like that. And I'm sure they all lived in sort of moderate houses or whatever. But it was just, it wasn't about any of the flash stuff. They all had obviously great instruments. They all had nice clothes. They all looked respectable, but they were just normal, just lovely people.
That's one thing. The first time I ever went to meet a band was Power Station. So it was a Duran side project with John Taylor, Bernard Edwards played. Well, he produced it, Tony Thompson, and then Robert Palmer, but Michael DeBar was on tour. And I was in New Orleans in the French Quarter, and these girls were like screaming like crazy. And I was across the street because I'm like, I'm just over this. This is just ridiculous. And so the window I'm looking at is all chain linked. And their bodyguard screams out loud, they're people, not animals. And that was something so profound in that statement, that they're real people. Just you're acting like. So fast forward a few years later, I got to meet Duran. I got to hang out at a bar and stuff. And the thing is, I realized we talked about normal stuff. We didn't talk about their music. We didn't talk about any of that. We talked about mundane stuff. And it was basically, they're real people. They're normal people. They don't want to talk about, sure. They may ask, how was the show? But after that, that was farthest thing removed from anything. And I'm not even and I'm not talking, it was not anything that was a wild romp or anything like that. It was strictly PG. So there's nothing that was tacky or crude, but they were real people. And that's what I think so many people forget. There was one girl while we were sitting at the bar, she came up and she looks at Simon and she's like, oh my gosh, I've never met you before. I really, really want a picture. And Simon looked at her and says, we've met before. And she got her friend to take a picture, and he looks miffed because I'm actually in the background of this picture. And I mean, if you're trying to pull a fast one on them, they've recognized you if you've been around enough.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird. And this was 95, so this wasn't their heyday. But it's just one of those things that they are normal people. And they have the same problem. So you can aspire to be famous, but that does not mean that your world is going to be suddenly perfect. If anything, it's going to get more complicated because you're going to have more people around you.
Mm. I know I worked that out from hanging around other musicians who wanted to be famous, really desperate. It's not that they wanted to be famous, that they wanted to be loved. Mm-hmm. And that is the coldest place to go into music. Wanting to be loved is the coldest place you can walk into, because people will pick up on it and you go, oh, goodness me, who do you think you are? Because your ego will start to try and shine. And it's not about your ego, it's about your creativity. And there's a big difference there. And that's one of the major problems, like you say, about suicidal artists getting suicidal, because they want to be loved. All of us, every human being wants to be loved. All of us have this nurture that wants to be loved. And you can talk about that on the spiritual side of things, but mm-hmm. It's inside of us, inherently inside of us. And that gets mixed up, which is where the fame lure comes from, which is where you want to go, I want to be famous because I want to be loved. And it's a fundamental mistake, I think, for a lot of musicians to do that, is to think, I want to be famous, because you really work out, if you want to be loved, be lovable. You've got to be lovable. Well, and that's what's wonderful about all these normal musicians, because when you meet them, they're lovable because they just talk about everyday stuff. And that's what you got to be. To be loved, you need to be lovable. And if you've got that inside of you already and you start to push yourself in any direction, then it'll be a success for you, whatever you do, whether you make it lofty heights or whether you just bubble along. It doesn't matter, really. But you will be loved because you'll be passionate about what you do. I think that's so important. It's really important, because people get lost in the melee of all this, especially now. It's like a storm, isn't it? Everything, mm-hmm. It's like our life. We get more in a lifetime than our ancestors would get we get more in a day probably than our ancestors got in a lifetime. You go back a few thousand years, there's just so much information coming in and we're bombarded by it, and we need to discern that. Well,
even if you go back to the 80s, if we go back to the 80s and the 70s, we didn't have this much information being forced upon us. No. And I mean, if you went out to dinner, you went out to dinner. If your friends missed you, your friends missed you. It wasn't that anybody can track you down and text you and get in touch with you right then and there. We had a place where we could go and unplug. We didn't have to be plugged in all the time. And it's not just musicians that suffer from that whole fame thing. And you nailed it on the head. It's about needing to be loved. It's about looking outside to be loved. And I think there's so many of us that we didn't get that as a kid, that we start thinking, well, wouldn't it be great to be famous and have everybody love us? The whole problem is Britney Spears can be the poster child here, because Britney got all this adulation only to have people rip the stool out from underneath her. And I mean, that's the thing. People don't understand that about fame. People will build you up. The person that's hot on TikTok 1 minute is going to be knocked down, 2 days later, because they don't have all the views that they had on the viral video. So it's a head game.
Yes, chasing the dopamine hit. It's a dopamine hit. Bang, 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 bang. And then you get into this numbness trance. I call it the numbness trance, where you're just chasing the hit. And it's just, what are you doing? What are you doing with that? And social media is brilliant at doing that and absorbing you into it. It's got its places, and it's got its, you can find good things in it, and you can find good things on the internet. But I think it's discernment also, being discerning and not worrying about the dopamine hit, but just actually starting to produce rather than consume. If you start to produce more than you consume, then you realize you're actually producing something. Doesn't matter how bad it is at first. First time I started writing songs, oh my goodness me, it was atrocious. And then it got better very quickly, because I couldn't stand the faces that people would listen to my songs go, oh, yeah, this is nice. Yeah. So, okay. And when I first started singing, it's the same thing. Now I've learned how to sing now, but my voice wasn't very good at all. It was kind of all out of tune. And I learned how to sing because of that. I didn't want to keep offending people. Now people enjoy when I sing, so it's a good thing. But it took time to do that. I went and got taught by Jackie Raw. She was in Shack Attack. Remember Shack Attack? She was one of the singers in Shack Attack. she actually got me into a lot of this stuff because if she ever listens to this, sorry, Jackie, she'd never say anything about this, but she used to do tapping on me, EFT, emotional freedom tapping.
I just got into that, but go ahead.
Yeah, she got into tapping because I was so tense at hitting night, because I've been conditioned to say you can't sing and you can't sing highly, right? So every time I went to sing highly, it went, and like everything was squeezing upwards, and she noticed this, look, your lower registry is great, you got this, and then all of a sudden you try and go high. She goes, I don't want to spend hours and hours and hours doing this. We're going to do this. And she did this emotional freedom tapping around me for like the first 5 minutes of the song lesson. I'd sit there and go, wow, what did you just do to me?
Yeah.
And then I'd start being a lot more freer, and my registry went up quite quickly because of that. But she kind of got me into Ki Gong without me realizing that, because that's what Ki Gong is. Tapping is all tapping and stretching and breathing and moving the body. So it's all based around Ki Gong. And I thought, yeah, well, EFT is very powerful stuff. And you're tapping the meridians of the body. Mm-hmm. And it really does help to release the stagnant energy, because of, like you're saying about the overload, we're talking about the overload. It needs a release. Otherwise, you're going to be like a pressure cooker that never gets released, and it explodes in sometimes in the most unfortunate ways. And we need that release. So any form of like tapping or deep breathing or anything like that is we all need that. We all need that, because, like you're saying, we need the time out. Mm-hmm. Because when you have the time out and you're relaxed and you're ready to go, and you go into something after you've had that time out, you really appreciate it. And even the time when you get maybe a little bit bored with your time out, and you think, but I've got this coming up, and then you go and do that, it becomes even better. You appreciate it more. And I think it's the lack of appreciation. I remember when I was a musician on tour, you'd go hotel, gig, bus, hotel, gig, bus, hotel, gig, bus. And you realize you're just in a trance. So you make up fun while you're doing it. And sometimes it's drinking fun. Other times it's just having a laugh and just messing about. But you made your fun up. But I think today is just like a bombardment. And you speak to people now, and especially a lot of the elderly people I still work with my charity. They say the art of conversation is going. Yeah. People are no longer being able to communicate for more than a couple of minutes, a couple of sentences. Paul Weller said in one of his songs, if we could communicate for 2 minutes or more, that would be a start. I think in this song, Start. And I thought, well, yeah, I didn't see that at the time, because whenever I was out, I was always chatting to everybody. And now I see it's more difficult to speak to people for more than 2 minutes. And I can see where he was coming from with that line, because it seems to be the other conversation has gone. People's interest in certain things, or the confidence, I should say, to speak out about things, or to put their hands up and say, well, I don't know very much about that. Could you tell me? Just to have that humility, I think is starting to be a bit lacking in our world today.
Well, everybody's chasing the Andy Warhol thing.
Yeah.
The 15, famous for 15 minutes. It's like, yeah. So it's interesting that, when you look back, such as a 2-minute conversation, it's like they were actually ahead of their time, I guess. And it is sad that people, I'd rather text you. No, I don't want to text. I'd rather talk on the phone, because honestly, I can hear your voice. You can hide behind a text.
I hated them when they first came out. And same with email. I hated that now. But every time I write an email, I always put dear at the beginning and then sign it off at the end to try and make it more like a letter. People go, oh, you're so informative with your emails. I go, well, to me, it's like a letter. Otherwise, or a text, I'll do the same. So luckily, nobody texts me anymore, which is great. It suits me. So when they want me, they'll ring me up and say, oh, do you want to come out and do this? Or do you want that? Blah, blah, blah. So, or send me an email. It's fine. I prefer that rather than, I've seen my wife sometimes get stuck into that, like text back, bing, bing. And I said, why are you doing this? She goes, well, I said, well, just pick the phone up and speak to her. Stop this back and forth. And so it's slowed down on her phone. She rings people up regularly now. So it's a lot better. But yeah, it's not really communicating properly. You don't get the influence of people's voices. You can misread what's coming at you with an email, and it could cause grief and problems and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of one step removed from reality, which is why I think there's a big problem with people being ferocious about other people because they're sitting behind a keyboard rather than being in front of their face. And that's like a psychosis. That's a psychotic problem. And that needs to be examined as well, because it's not good. Not good, attacks on people.
Well, it's like one author had said that she got a 1-star review. And it's the 1-star review in her book because, well, the person didn't like the genre that the book was written in. She didn't read the book. She just didn't like the genre it was written in. Why would you even waste the time because you feel empowered by doing this? But I want to, before we end this, I wanted to talk to you. So what made you get into meditation?
My trauma. I had a very traumatic childhood when I was young, and my mother and father died when I was very young. There's a reason why I kind of got into music, because I found it soothing. But meditation was when I first went to, we were at a mind, body, spirit show with my wife, and she wanted to get this Curlian photography. I don't know if you've ever seen it with the auras, and hers was this beautiful gold and red, really wonderful. Mine was all this blue and purple esoteric-y type stuff, which is kind of what I was into at that time. And she wasn't happy with that, because she wanted the moody blue sort of music artistic one. Yeah. She didn't like this beautiful sort of Mother Earth type thing. So we walked around the corner, and she got it taken again outside of this Korean stall, and I started talking to the woman and talking, oh, my music career is fading, blah blah blah, which is how I got into Ki Gong. And then when I got into Ki Gong, I realized it was a moving meditation. And I realized, because I was so stressed and anxious, didn't know what I was going to do. I hadn't decided not to be a musician at that time. And I realized just focusing on my body and my breath at that moment in time, everything just disappeared. And I don't sit there in silent meditation, because I think meditation is such a big word. If you think about meditation, it's lots of different Eastern practices put into that one word. And meditation just means to think deeply about something. I mean, I did a silent meditation today, so with the group that I was with, but I don't make a big habit of sitting there for 20 minutes, half an hour a day, just doing that. I think that's, for some people, that's brilliant. For me, I feel like I've got to be doing something. But I do it when I'm doing classes and things like that. But that's what got me into it, is realizing that all my stress and anxiety and even the trauma started to disappear inside of me. So I can sit and do silent meditations. I'm going to go and do one actually after this conversation. So we're going to go and do a meditation. But I love sound meditation. And sound meditation is using your voice. Everybody knows the Om, but you can actually meditate on certain areas of the body and use your voice, and you actually start, when you get good at it, you start to vibrate certain areas of the body, and they call it your chakra system. So you'll tone on a certain area of the body, and when you first do it, it feels very, very unusual, and it sounds like a woo-woo kind of stuff, but it's not. It's actually like, it actually worked for me, and I felt like when you've done it, you feel like you brought everything into the center, and you feel really clear, precise, and sort of clean almost inside, and it's just amazing. So I prefer like sound meditation, but I do teach like moving, silent, sound meditation, guided meditation, and breathing meditation. So I do all that teaching anyway, so as a meditation coach. But it's, to me, it's about what you feel comfortable with. And the trouble with a lot of people who teach meditation is like, no, this is how you do it, this is how it's going to be, blah blah blah. And I do like a coaching thing where I do all the different types of meditations and rituals and the mantras and everything like that I've learned. And I go, this is everything. You're gonna know everything about this. You're gonna go everything about the quantum world, how the quantum world works, how the physical world works, and how the quantum world actually creates the physical world, and all this kind of stuff. You're going to learn all of this, and then you find the meditation that works for you, and you can do it anywhere you want. And that's what I love about it, because it's such an open field and an open goal that you, like you say, the tapping, if you are 100% focused on your tapping while you're doing it, that's a meditation, so it's like it's an enormous field. And we get again, hooked up on it's got to be like this, got to be like, no, it hasn't got to be like anything. You can be like whatever you want it to be. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about it, is it's open and it's free and it's creative, and you can create whatever you want from it. So, I mean, I've created some of my own guided meditations, but I don't like guiding people so much with meditations, because then they become reliant on me or what I've recorded. I want you to be able to, as a coach, I'd want you to be able to do it for yourself. So if you think, oh, okay, I've got 5 minutes here, what can I do? I'm going to meditate on how I can create a beautiful dinner tonight. Something like that. That's what kind of got me into it, was realizing that it stopped stress and anxiety. And then I really went deep into it with a lot of readings, and I go to readings of the Vedic scripts, which are very ancient Indian texts. And I do sing actually Sanskrit songs, which are very early human language songs now, as mantras and things like that. And it just makes me feel great. And I'll finish with this little diatribe with this. We had a problem with our neighbours. They're really loud, and they think having a party is turning their music up as loud as they possibly can, shouting at each other for 12 hours. You know, that's what they think a really raging party is. I think we should have come to some of the parties I went to. They were a lot better than that. Anyway, I just I walked up the garden one day when they were really at the height of their sort of racket, and I sang this one mantra, as a Jai Matakali. It was just up and down, and I know I wasn't trying to impress them or anything, but I was just singing it and wishing for peace to happen in the neighbourhood. And then a few weeks later, they get an abatement order, i.e. telling them to stop all sound coming from their house, from the council.
Wow.
And it was just like, this has been going on for years. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden this stops. And I just thought, maybe it was me, maybe it wasn't me, but I'm a romantic dreamer. And I think, well, yeah, maybe someone was looking after me up there.
You put it out there. That doesn't mean that somebody else didn't report it, but you put the energy out there.
Yeah.
Since you cook, you'll understand. You know about roux, right? How to make a roux. You know, when you're making the slurry or whatever. Some people call it slurry. Yeah. My uncle, when he is stressed, he will make roux. And he considers that his form of meditation. Yeah. I don't have the patience to make a roux, but he will sit there and make a roux, and then he'll freeze it, and then he'll make another one just so he can chill.
Wow. So okay, that's the meditation. That's meditation for you. So cooking. And cooking for me is enormous meditation as well. It's what you focus, where your mind goes. We say in our Ki Gong practice, where your mind goes, your energy follows. So if you're focusing on your food, 100% focusing on your food, get the phone out of the room. If you want some soothing music in the background, great. You know, that's meditation as far as I'm concerned. And it makes you feel good, do it, and do it more of it, you know, and especially if you're stressed. And breathing is the easiest, but tapping, brilliant, because you're actually physically doing something, and it will bring your mind into it. If you think about the mind naturally wants to move. You go right down to the very basics, the very sort of, we can't even go any smaller than quarks, but you go down to the atoms and what's inside the atoms, the protons, neutrons, and the quarks. Everything is moving and vibrating. I think it was Nikola Tesla who said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think of sound, frequency, and vibration. And he wasn't wrong, because now in the quantum field, they're showing everything is vibrating. So everything's moving. If it moves in a quicker level, it becomes very, very solid. If it's not moving very, very, very quickly, it becomes like air. So it's you finding the vibration inside of you, I think, is really important for you to be like relaxed. And so therefore your mind is also going to be always moving. It always moves. So people say you've got to quiet and silence your mind. It's difficult because it's naturally wanting to move. But when you focus it on something, it will stay on that. And therefore that's the silent mind, when you're focusing on your breathing, and you can 100% focus on your breathing or 100% focus on the silence. That's what they mean about the silent mind. Your mind's still doing something, but it's silent because it needs to be moving. But it might be moving just on the silence. So it's difficult to explain, but that's why it moves all the time, because it's naturally wanting to move. I think it's gone, what the Tibetan monks call it, they call it the monkey mind. It just jumps everywhere now. It's like a time traveler, past, future, everywhere it wants to go. now I think it's starting to calm down, and a lot of people I'm meeting obviously want to get into meditation and mindfulness and Ki Gong and things like that. So there seems to be a bigger movement towards that, which I think is great because it means you'll live a better life. And at the end of the day, it's your life, and you need to live a good one. All of everyone who's listening to this needs to live a good life, and really focus on that. Really focus on living a good life. Because as I say, where your mind goes, your energy follows. If it goes on all this stuff that's going on in the world, oh my goodness me, it shreds you. But if you focus on actually what you're doing, you'll realize that a lot of what's happening in the world doesn't actually affect you. So
I know exactly what you're talking. When my husband passed, I mean, I had already started to unplug, but when my husband passed, I had really unplugged from the news because it's like, I can't change that. It's just going to eat at me. So that just has to stay there. And for anybody that's listening that wants to meditate, that's tried to meditate and says, oh, I can't do it because my mind goes off. Monkey mind is a real thing. And you just have to keep going back slowly but surely. And when your mind goes off, calm it down and go back to meditating and find what works for you as far as meditation goes.
Yeah, definitely. You got to do what you got to do. And that's what I say is find what you're happy with. And it can just be turning the lights off out in the room, lying there quietly and just let it go. See what happens, see where your mind goes and let it wander. And it's getting into that wonderful state of being not asleep and not awake. When you can find that state when you're lying there, that's when you can really create like lucid dreams and things like that. You can have endless amounts of fun if you can get into that state. But I think so many people are so stressed now, they don't get into that state very often. But if you can, that's a wonderful place to do, especially in the mornings. In the mornings is a brilliant way of finding your intention for your life. Is just you're in that sort of half awake, half asleep state. Things are very clear before all the traffic starts. We're on a busy road here, or before the lights start to come on. It's that beautiful time where your mind is very, well, it should be very quiet. Hopefully it is. If it's not, then you need to do more deep breathing and things like that. But it should be quieter then. And then that's when you can really manifest what you want for your day and for the rest of your life. Really important time.
I really wanted to talk to you about the dream method, but I know you got to go meditate, and I'm sure you already had that scheduled, but that was something I wanted to bring up, was the dream method that you have on your website.
What it is, I can talk about it very quickly. I've got 5 stepping stones of what I went through to get me to where I am today, which is very clear and focused. So I don't get angry anymore, because when you get angry, whoever angers you is controlling you. The dream method is really for people who've got emotional scars, maybe from the past, or they're really suffering from traumatic experiences. And I take them from looking from step 1, it's about focusing on your sort of what has happened to you. So you actually realize, you start to discover what is the reoccurring things. We have a lot of things that happen to us that are the same, but different players come into our life. So it comes around like the news is the same. If you listen to the news, it's the same, but it's just different players come around. Like, oh, there's going to be another 2 superpowers. It's not China and whoever this time, it's Russia and America, whatever it is. And so it's the same. So you're discovering that cycles inside of yourself. And then you start to realize that you are just observing them. So you're realizing that you're just the observer of these happenings, and you realize that you can actually turn those negative thoughts into positive ones. So if you're doing something that you don't like doing, simple is just to turn off, like you say, turn off the news. So you're realizing that you've got the power to do that. And then when you get to the E part of the dream method, you're embracing your life. You're starting to embrace, it's like I say, finding your passion, and you're starting to move your life in that direction where you want to go. And then you start to actualize that. So you've got to this point, and it could even be writing a book at this point, because you've gone through all these different things, and all these different things that you've been through will help other people, which is what we were talking about earlier, is don't matter how many people, just try and help other people. So that's what you start to actualize. And the M is making this practice your own. So you've learned all these different meditation and mindfulness techniques, and you just can master it. You're mastering your own life, and you're starting to say, okay, I'm more discerning now. I'm starting to do this. And the people that have been through you see the changes and you go, oh my goodness me, this is what I love to do. I love to do it. So really, but it's basically, I'm doing coaching on it. I coached all the way through the Dream Method. It's about a 12-week course. And it's, I keep it reasonable. I don't work with everybody. You have to go through a call to speak with me first to do it, to make sure that you're the right fit to do this, because it means you've got to do it for yourself.
Right.
Because I haven't got the magic pill. I can't say, I wish I had. Well, in fact, I don't wish I had, because I think you got to do the work. You've got to do the work. It's like when I want to be a musician, I spent 8 hours a day for about a year practicing my bass guitar to make sure that I never failed an audition. The only way I was going to fail those auditions was on my personality, which could, because I was quite sparky then, that was a big possibility. So I tried to keep my mouth shut until I got the gig. But it's like mastering and making it your own. So you've got to do the work, do the practice. And it goes alongside my Bright Beings Academy school, which is about Ki Gong, which is a lot cheaper method to do, where you can just get involved with it. The online classes I do, which the reason I've taken them online is because I can see more people, basically. So, but that's the Dream Method. Dream Method came up through my experience. I just looked at how I got from that position of being that really stressed out musician, thinking, what am I going to do with my life, to where I am now, which is thinking, I know exactly what I'm doing with my life. And I want to help other people do that for themselves as well. And your intuition grows, your sense of sort of natural wisdom grows. You suddenly realize that the news doesn't matter. You're just focusing on yourself. And it's not narcissistic or sociopathic. Right. It's about you. And love yourself. When you love yourself and you go out and you meet other people, they love you because you love yourself. And it's not about what other people think, it's what you think. So I think it was Caroline Miss, I was watching her talking about one of her seminars, and she said, right, we're going to go and do a group thing. So you're going to go and meet each other and write down every requirement you need for someone to actually speak with you. And you had all these people writing all these things down, and they pass it over to the other person. They're going, hello. You don't know what to say to them. And it suddenly gave them a big realization of going, let other people be who they're going to be. Yeah. Let them be who they're going to be, and just accept it. And because we're not accepting things at the moment. I think we've been conditioned to either look as people below us, alongside us, or above us. And if they're below us, we'll treat them badly. If they're alongside us, we'll try and knock them down. If they're above us, we'll start chipping away and try and pull them off their pedestal. And it's kind of how we've been conditioned in the West to be like that a little bit, with the competitive nature. And that needs to change. And then you just meet people for being themselves, rather than wanting to change them or think, oh, that's annoying about you, or I don't like that. Just accept it. And then other people will accept you, and you accept other people. And I think that's what we're missing now in our society, is the characters, people with different characters. It's all getting homogenized and everything's becoming the same. And people are, oh, look at me, I'm so wonderful. I'm good. And sort of like, they sound the same when they're coming out of the radio, and they're sounding the same when they're coming out of TV. It's becoming too samey. I remember when I was growing up, look at the characters we had. Muhammad Ali, Bruce Lee, Martin Luther King had just gone, JFK as a president. We had just amazing characters that even Steve Austin, Bionic Man, even though he was he was still a character.
Yeah. I mean, Mr. T, there was, there was personality. It wasn't so conformed. I mean, everybody, we want this person to look like this. Well, and I got into a conversation about this recently, because everybody, it's like, well, this movie did well, so we're going to make 10 more like it. We're not going to give anything else a chance. And the person was talking about creativity. I said, well, here's the problem. You have the people that are creative, and then you have the money men who run the studio, and they don't meet. And they just want to continue to repeat what is working. Because they're looking at that bottom line.
Very true. And that's where I think it's all gone a little bit awry. If you think about numbers, right? This is very esoteric teaching. You think about a number. Show me a number.
Okay.
Just show me a number. Not the symbol of a number or what a number represents, but show me a number.
I'm thinking of one.
You can think of a number.
I've got one.
What number? Oh, yeah, but can you show it to me? Can you show me the number?
5.
That was 5 fingers.
Mm-hmm.
But the number, what's the number? Where's the number 5?
I'll give you the number 5. Not that you can see it because of all the light.
That's the symbol. That's the symbol of a number 5.
All right. Well, then tell me what I'm doing wrong, please, sir.
You're not doing anything wrong. There's no such thing as the number 5. It's a representation of 5 things. It's the same as money. Same as money.
I have said many a times that money is just a numbers game because there's nothing backing it.
Especially now, the fiat currency is unbelievable what they've done. But it's there's nothing there. It's an exchange of energy, which I think it's good if it's done in the right way. Exchange of energy is all really good, but it doesn't actually exist. Not like this. This is a microphone. You can see the microphone, but this is one microphone, but you can't see the number 1, but you can see that there's one microphone. So there's no one. There's no one.
Then you go back to the value of it. So you can tell me that microphone's worth 100 pounds, but is it really worth that? And I go back to when my in-laws bought their first house, they paid $17,000. When they sold that house, they paid $70,000. Did anything in that house change?
It's inflation.
Exactly.
Why did it inflate? Is that my better than that? My friend's mother bought a beautiful house on the river in Shepperton, really prime real estate, for I think it was £2,000. I think £2,000 to £3,000. She sold it for £750,000.
Wow.
I mean, this is when she was working, I think, for McDonald's on their advertising account, and she lost £100,000 in her bank account. She asked her son to come and find it. I was thinking, a different world to me, but it's like that's the kind of woman she was. But that's how much inflation has happened. I remember when I was young, we used to take glass bottles to our newsagents to get the refund on it, and we'd save our 17 pence to buy a little Matchbox car, and we treasured that little car. I treasured it, and I had all these little cars that I'd saved all these little 17 pences up to buy these cars. And the shopkeeper had this wonderful brown coat on. It was all just boxes there, and I used to buy. And he goes, you saved up again, Peter. Here you go. You've been saving up. I'll save this one for you. And it was just like a lovely interaction. It felt like it was worth something. Now all I'm seeing is like digits on the screen coming in and out, and it's like it doesn't mean anything to me. It's like when I first started as a musician, it was all cash. Yeah, cash. When I first started my first job, it was all cash in hand, and it was like there were bits of paper, but it meant something because you take that bit of the paper, especially as in my early days as a musician, you take it to the pub. You get all these bits of paper with a sore head the next day, and it's like but it doesn't really exist. It's the energy that you put in. I think that's where we're going now as a society. It's the energy you get in. That's when you get the energy back. And that energy can come back in the form of money. It can come back in the form of money, or it can come back in other ways. So, but I think we'll see.
I want to go back to your story about the bringing the bottles in. Well, now we drop them in our bucket by the house. Then we take it to the curb, and they take it away. But instead of us getting paid for it, we're paying them to take it.
It's a great business if you can get it.
Yeah, I mean, how'd that work out? How'd that switch? I mean, we used to be able to take things in and get paid for it, but now we're paying them. It's like, how'd this happen?
It's going a bit wrong, isn't it? I want to work. I'm trying to work out, and I've been asking actually people in my local council when it became from the local council to the local authority. I mean, it's a very interesting switch. I don't know if they're called authorities in they call them your local authorities, but over here they call them local authorities. And the word authority to me means somebody who knows what they're doing. And you go into our councils, they don't know what they're doing.
I've gone to one city council meeting here, and it's a small town, and it didn't seem like everybody knew what they were doing. It's like, oh, we get an extra $200 a month to do this, so we're here.
Oh my goodness.
That's how but we had my town has this whole story of, we had a big company, Motorola, come in, build a big facility, and then right before the collapse. So they built this big facility, promised the town they were going to do all this, and then collapsed. Well, then the Ponzi scheme guy comes in and buys the building after it started to deteriorate, and then it gets sold again, and then we have another problem, and now it's sold again. But by this point, the power's been shut off in the building for over 10 years and everything else. So it's like, now the town's going, okay, so what are we going to do with this? That was part of our tax structure. So now let's give it to the homeowners.
My goodness me.
So, but anyway, we're digressing. I love talking with you. I was going to ask you, how hard did you get picked on a lot with Peter Paul Parker? I mean,
Peter Parker, yes.
Yeah, Spider-Man.
Yeah, I put the Paul in because of the Peter Parker. Well, yeah, it was Spider-Man, but remember Thunderbirds?
Okay, yeah.
Parker,
yeah.
I think his first, I looked it up. I did find somewhere that his first name was Peter.
Okay.
And also we had Sir Peter Parker, who was the chairman of British Rail while I was growing up in school. So they had a pick. All the children had a pick to say how they could take the mickey out of me. So it was fine.
Oh, trust me.
It's character building. Honestly, I love it because it gives you straight away. Peter Parker's in the building. They can completely pick on me straight away, and because it's made me smiley because of that. Yeah, that's me. Yeah. So it's been good.
Well, I know you have Peter, Paul, and Mary. I mean, so it works either.
But yeah,
I got it because I'm really technically Dawn, but I go by Donna because of all of this. I had Tony, Orlando, and Dawn. So I used to get, hey, where's Tony? Delta Dawn. And then when Dawn dishwashing soap came out, that was really the nail in the head, because it was like, oh, so you take grease out of the way.
Yeah.
No. So anyway, I digress. I think we've covered everything. Is there anything that I haven't covered with you that you want to mention?
No, if people want to get a hold of me, they can get me at my website. I've got two websites. The Dream Methods is peterpaulparker.com. And you can contact me via the website for anything else, peterpaulparker.co.uk. I'm always happy to hear from people. So I'm very easy to find. You just Google that and it tends to come up at the top. There's not many. I think there's another musician called Peter Paul Parker. I think he gave up. I was watching him, but I think he gave up. I haven't seen him for ages. But yeah, you can find me very easily. I've got a YouTube site and I'm on all over sort of Facebook and things like that. So if you want to connect, I'm more than happy to help.
All right. Well,
always happy to help. Always happy to help.
Thank you for coming on the show.
No, it's been a real pleasure. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and we'll speak again, I'm sure, at some point in the future.
Okay. I had a blast. I hope you guys had a blast too, talking about, listening about music and bass playing. I mean, some of you guys in there are like, oh, come on. But then when we talk about the meditation aspect and the Ki Gong, I mean, our body is energy and we don't really think about it. And yes, I seem like a buffoon about the whole, show me the number 5. And the truth is, it is kind of a numbers game. It's not something that is tangible. If you have $5 bills in your pocket, or 5 pence, or 5 pounds in your hand, then it is tangible. But for the most part, our money system now is just a numbers game. And there's a lot of energy when you think about it. It can go back, and we didn't even touch on this, but if you think about the Matrix, I mean, that is a lot of code and it's a lot of energy. There's energy in code. It takes electricity to run code, and it takes electricity to run computers, which is all energy, and to do wire transfers. And yes, I'm getting off on a tangent, but I hope you guys, I think if you learn about tapping, I started tapping after talking to my guest, Michelle Clark. I had a couple other people mention it. Here we are. It's being reinforced again. And I started doing it, and it is kind of freeing. It is kind of nice. And I would recommend trying it. It's not going to hurt you. And it's a way to meditate, because I don't always have the best intentions when I meditate. My mind does do monkey mind. So if you're trying to meditate and you can't find a way to do it, try tapping. Try cooking. Try doing something that you can focus on solely. And I'm not saying scroll through TikTok because you're not focusing. So find a way to focus, shut all the noise out, even if it's like staring at the lava lamp. Do whatever it takes to find your focus, because then you're going to clear yourself. And I do know what he's talking about, chakra alignment. When I was taking my intuition class a long time ago, I used to do the chakra balancing. Every class we started, we did chakra balancing and clearing. And there is some power in there. There is some power that is just freeing. So try today or tomorrow, but try soon to find a way to meditate and free yourself, because there's too much trauma and stress that we go through on a daily basis that we keep bottled up. And we do, like he said, need to release the pressure cooker. So on that note, I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you have a question, comment, or concern, please reach out to Donna, Dauna, at better2podcast.com. That's Donna at better2podcast.com. We do have a website, better2podcast.com, of course. And you can also find our social media links there. If you want to support the podcast and leave a review, you can do so on Apple Podcasts or on Podchaser. And you can always leave a comment in our social media. It's greatly appreciated. So on that note, as I said, you have all my links. You have the email. I hope whenever you listen to this, you enjoy the show and you have a wonderful day, evening, weekend, whenever you're choosing to listen. And I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye. The Better 2 podcast is mixed, edited, and produced by Rich Zai of Third Ear Audio Productions.